I'm Maya, 32 years old, and for the past 7 years, Vanguard Creative in Los Angeles has been my professional home. I started as a junior designer, fresh out of art school, with nothing but a portfolio and an unshakable belief in the power of authentic storytelling. The agency was a whirlwind of bright ideas and relentless deadlines, a place where talent was supposed to speak louder than anything else. I poured my heart into every campaign, staying late, pushing boundaries, and always striving to understand the true essence of a brand. My work ethic wasn't just about ambition. It was about proving that someone like me, from a modest background, could not only belong but could also excel in this cutthroat industry. I quickly climbed the ranks, earning the title of Senior Creative Director 2 years ago, a role I cherished. Vanguard Creative, nestled in a sleek downtown high-rise, was known for its innovative campaigns and its diverse, though sometimes strained, team. We handled major national accounts, and the pressure was always on to deliver groundbreaking results. I thrived on that pressure, seeing each challenge as an opportunity to innovate and grow. My team was a vibrant mix of designers, copywriters, and strategists, and we had built a reputation for delivering some of the agency's most successful projects. We understood each other, respected our individual strengths, and collaborated seamlessly. It felt like a true meritocracy, a place where hard work and creative brilliance were genuinely rewarded. However, a subtle shift had begun to ripple through the agency in recent months. Whispers of a new visionary director joining our department started circulating, someone handpicked by the CEO himself. His arrival was framed as a strategic move to elevate our creative output even further, but there was an underlying tension, a sense of unease. I tried to dismiss the apprehension, reminding myself that change was inevitable in a dynamic industry like ours. My focus remained on our current projects, particularly the upcoming presentation for Aura Skincare, a potential multi-million-dollar client. This was a pitch I had personally championed, believing deeply in the brand's potential. The Aura Skincare campaign was more than just a project. It was a culmination of months of research, late-night brainstorming sessions, and meticulous creative development. My team and I had poured our collective energy into crafting a narrative that was both compelling and deeply resonant. We were confident it would be a game-changer. I had meticulously prepared every detail, from the initial concept sketches to the final polished presentation deck. My vision for Aura Skincare was to tell a story of natural beauty and self-acceptance, moving beyond superficial trends. It was a message I believed in, and I knew it would connect with the client. The agency buzzed with anticipation for the new director's arrival. Everyone speculated about his background, his style, and how he would impact our daily operations. I overheard snippets of conversations, mostly about his impressive family connections and his unconventional approach. I remember feeling a faint tremor of concern, a tiny crack in my otherwise solid confidence. It wasn't about my abilities, it was about the unknown, the potential for disruption. I had worked too hard to let anything derail my progress or the success of my team. My colleagues, especially those who had been with Vanguard for years, shared a similar cautious optimism. We had navigated leadership changes before, but this one felt different, shrouded in a veil of privilege and expectation that was hard to ignore. We just hoped he would understand Vanguard's unique culture. The week before his official start, a memo was circulated detailing his impressive, albeit somewhat vague, credentials. It mentioned his innovative strategies and proven track record in a different sector, but offered little insight into his understanding of advertising. It felt like a carefully curated introduction. I spent that weekend reviewing all our active projects, ensuring everything was in perfect order for the transition. The Aura Skincare presentation was scheduled for the following Monday, a mere few days after the new director's official start. The timing felt oddly significant, almost like a test. Despite the looming changes, I felt a deep sense of pride in what I had achieved at Vanguard. My journey had been challenging, but every obstacle had only strengthened my resolve. I was ready to face whatever came next, confident in my skills and my unwavering commitment to my craft. Little did I know, the shadow that was about to fall over my career had nothing to do with my talent, and everything to do with someone else's deeply ingrained biases. The stage was set for a confrontation that would redefine my understanding of professional success and personal resilience. The day Ethan Thorne arrived at Vanguard Creative, the atmosphere shifted perceptibly. He strode into the office with an air of entitled confidence, his expensive suit and perfectly coiffed hair announcing his presence before he even spoke. There was an immediate sense that he saw himself as superior, a cut above the rest of us. His introductory speech was filled with corporate jargon and vague promises of synergy and disruptive innovation. He spoke of streamlining processes and enhancing efficiency, but his eyes seemed to scan the room, assessing, judging, rather than connecting. It was clear he wasn't interested in understanding the existing dynamics. When he finally made his way to our creative department, his gaze lingered on me for a moment too long, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. I extended my hand, introducing myself as the senior creative director, and offered to walk him through our current projects. He barely acknowledged my outstretched hand. "Ethan Thorne," he stated, his voice dismissive. "I've already reviewed the top-level reports. I'm here to implement a new vision, not to be briefed on past efforts." His tone was condescending, and it immediately set an uncomfortable precedent for our interactions. It was a clear signal of his intent. Over the next few days, his behavior towards me became increasingly pointed. During team meetings, he would frequently interrupt my explanations, rephrasing my ideas as his own or dismissing them outright. He seemed to delight in subtly undermining my authority in front of my own team, a tactic designed to erode my confidence. He would often make comments about my approach being too traditional or lacking a certain polish, even when our campaigns were demonstrably successful. It felt like he was searching for reasons to criticize, rather than genuinely evaluating my work. His critiques were never constructive, only demeaning. I noticed he treated my male colleagues, particularly those from similar backgrounds to his, with a different level of respect, even when their ideas were less developed than mine. There was an undeniable bias in his interactions, a subtle but persistent undercurrent of discrimination that was hard to pinpoint but impossible to ignore. One afternoon, he pulled me aside, ostensibly to discuss the Aura skincare presentation. "Maya," he began, leaning back in his chair, "I've decided to take the lead on the Aura pitch. I believe it requires a fresh perspective, something more aligned with my strategic vision." He said it as if it were a favor. My heart sank. I had poured months into that pitch, and he was casually taking it over just days before the presentation. I tried to explain the depth of our research and the meticulous planning involved, but he waved his hand dismissively. "I'm sure you've done adequate groundwork, but I'll handle the delivery." He then proceeded to make a veiled comment about my style, not quite fitting the high-stakes nature of such a significant client. It was a coded message, implying that my background or identity somehow made me less capable of handling a major account. The insinuation was clear and deeply insulting. I felt a surge of anger, but I forced myself to remain calm. Confronting him directly would only play into his narrative. I decided to focus on what I could control, ensuring that all the necessary materials were perfect, even if he was the one presenting them. My professionalism was paramount. My team noticed the shift in dynamics, too. They were loyal and supportive, often exchanging worried glances when Ethan would dismiss my input. Their silent solidarity was a small comfort, but it didn't alleviate the growing sense of injustice that was beginning to fester within me. Ethan's presence cast a long shadow over our department. The vibrant, collaborative energy we once shared began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious silence. People were afraid to speak up, afraid to challenge his pronouncements, even when they knew he was making questionable decisions. He started micromanaging every aspect of our work, demanding unnecessary revisions and delaying approvals. It felt like he was deliberately trying to slow us down, to prove that his way was the only way, regardless of the impact on our productivity or morale. His arrogance was suffocating. I found myself working even longer hours, not just to complete my tasks, but to anticipate his next move, to mitigate any potential damage he might inflict. The joy I once found in my work was slowly being replaced by a gnawing anxiety, a constant vigilance against his undermining tactics. The Aura skincare presentation loomed, a ticking clock counting down to what I knew would be a pivotal moment. I had a terrible feeling about Ethan leading it, not just for my sake, but for the agency's reputation. He was clearly out of his depth, relying solely on his perceived status. I knew, deep down, that his privileged background had shielded him from ever truly understanding the effort and dedication required to succeed purely on merit. He was about to learn a very hard lesson, and unfortunately, Vanguard Creative was going to pay the price. As the Aura skincare presentation drew nearer, Ethan's efforts to sideline me intensified. He began excluding me from key meetings with the client, claiming he needed to establish his direct leadership. This was a blatant attempt to cut me out of the loop and prevent me from demonstrating my expertise. He would often hold impromptu strategy sessions, conveniently scheduling them when he knew I had other commitments, or simply forgetting to invite me. When I would inquire about them, he would feign surprise, saying, "Oh, was that today? Just a quick chat. Nothing you needed to be bothered with." His dismissive attitude extended to my creative team as well. He would critique their work harshly, often without offering constructive feedback, and then demand revisions that contradicted the original client brief. This created confusion and frustration, demoralizing the very people who had poured their hearts into the project. I tried to intervene, to explain the rationale behind our creative choices, but he would simply wave me off. "I understand the creative process, Maya," he'd say with a patronizing smile. "But sometimes, you need to step back and let the visionary lead. It's about the bigger picture." He began taking credit for ideas that were clearly mine or developed by my team. During a departmental update, he presented a concept for a new digital campaign that was almost identical to one I had pitched weeks earlier, without a single mention of my name. It was infuriating. I saw the looks on my team members' faces, a mix of disbelief and quiet anger. They knew the truth, and their silent support was a small but significant comfort. It reinforced my belief that my work spoke for itself, even if Ethan was trying to silence my voice. The agency's CEO, Mr. Harrison, seemed oblivious to the internal strife. He was charmed by Ethan's polished demeanor and impressive family name, too preoccupied with the potential new business he represented. It felt like the agency was prioritizing connections over competence. I tried to schedule a meeting with Mr. Harrison to express my concerns, but my requests were repeatedly denied or postponed. His assistant would always say he was too busy or in a critical strategic session. It became clear that my concerns were not a priority. The Aura skincare presentation was now just days away, and Ethan was still making last-minute changes to the deck, often undoing carefully planned elements. He seemed more concerned with putting his personal stamp on it than with presenting a cohesive and effective campaign. I watched him struggle to grasp the nuances of the client's brand, the deep research we had conducted into their target audience, and the subtle emotional appeal we had woven into the campaign's core. He saw it only as a transaction, not a narrative. He had a superficial understanding of the market, relying on outdated statistics and generic marketing buzzwords. His confidence was entirely unfounded, built on a foundation of privilege, rather than genuine insight or hard-earned experience. It was a recipe for disaster. My colleagues, especially those who had worked closely with me on the Aura pitch, expressed their anxieties. "He's going to botch it, Maya," one designer whispered to me. "He doesn't understand the client or the vision." Their words echoed my own growing fears. I spent countless hours secretly reviewing the original presentation, making sure I had a backup of every slide, every data point, every creative asset. It was a desperate measure, born out of a gut feeling that something was going to go terribly wrong. The tension in the office was palpable. Everyone knew the importance of the Aura skincare account, and everyone could see that Ethan was not prepared. His arrogance was blinding him to the reality of the situation, and it was putting the entire agency at risk. I knew I had to be ready, not just for myself, but for my team, for the integrity of our work, and for the future of Vanguard Creative. The stage was set for a public spectacle, and I had a feeling it wouldn't be the kind Ethan envisioned. The day before the Aura skincare presentation, Ethan called an all-hands meeting for the creative department. The atmosphere was unusually tense, a heavy silence hanging in the air. I had a knot in my stomach, sensing that something significant, and likely unpleasant, was about to happen. Ethan stood at the front of the room, a smug expression on his face, a stack of papers in his hand. He cleared his throat, and his voice boomed through the quiet office. "I've been evaluating the department's performance," he began, "and I've come to some difficult conclusions regarding efficiency and leadership." My heart pounded. I knew this was directed at me. He continued, "It has become clear that certain individuals are not aligned with Vanguard's new strategic direction. Their methods are outdated, and their contributions are no longer meeting the high standards we demand." His gaze fixed directly on me. He paused for dramatic effect, letting his words hang in the air. Then, he pointed directly at me, his voice rising. "Maya, your position as Senior Creative Director is being terminated, effective immediately. Your services are no longer required at Vanguard Creative." The words hit me like a physical blow. The room fell silent, a collective gasp rippling through my team. My colleagues stared, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. I felt a wave of humiliation wash over me, but I refused to let it show. "This decision is based on a comprehensive review of your performance and your inability to adapt to the new leadership," Ethan continued, his voice dripping with false concern. "We need fresh blood, new ideas, and a team that is fully committed to my vision for the future." He then gestured to a security guard who had quietly entered the room. "Please escort Maya from the premises. Her access will be revoked immediately." It was a public spectacle, designed to humiliate me, to make an example out of me in front of everyone I had worked with for years. My mind raced, but my body remained still. I looked around at the faces of my team, their expressions mirroring my own shock and outrage. I saw tears in some eyes, anger in others. Their loyalty was evident, even in that moment of profound injustice. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to maintain my composure. "Ethan," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands, "you can terminate my employment, but you cannot erase the work I've done or the value I've brought to this agency." My words were met with a defiant silence from him. He smirked, clearly enjoying his display of power. "Your personal opinions are irrelevant, Maya. This is a business decision." He turned away, signaling the end of the discussion, as if my entire career could be dismissed with a wave of his hand. I walked towards the security guard, my head held high. I refused to give Ethan the satisfaction of seeing me break down. As I passed my team, I met their eyes, offering a silent promise that this wasn't the end. Their unspoken support fueled my resolve. As I was escorted out of the building, the weight of the injustice pressed down on me. Years of dedication, countless hours of hard work, all dismissed in a single, humiliating moment. It was a stark reminder of how quickly privilege could dismantle merit. I felt the sting of tears, but I blinked them back. This wasn't just about me. It was about the systemic biases that allowed someone like Ethan to wield such power, to dismiss talent based on nothing more than his own prejudices and insecurities. The Los Angeles sun felt strangely harsh as I stepped onto the street, the bustling city suddenly feeling alien. My phone buzzed with messages from my team, expressing their outrage and support. Their loyalty was a lifeline in that moment of profound professional betrayal. I knew I had a choice, to crumble under the weight of this injustice, or to channel my anger into something productive. The Aura skincare presentation was still happening on Monday, and I had a strong feeling that Ethan's arrogance would be his undoing. I wouldn't just disappear. I would find a way to make sure the truth came out, not just for myself, but for everyone who had ever been underestimated or dismissed because of someone else's prejudice. My termination was public, and his exposure would be too. Stepping out of Vanguard Creative, the Los Angeles air felt heavy with the injustice of what had just transpired. I walked aimlessly for a while, the public humiliation replaying in my mind. The shock slowly gave way to a simmering anger, a fierce determination not to let this define me. My phone was buzzing incessantly with messages from my team and a few close colleagues. Their words of support were a balm to my wounded pride, reminding me that not everyone at Vanguard was blind to Ethan's true nature. Their loyalty was a powerful affirmation. I found a quiet coffee shop, the kind with dim lighting and soft jazz, and tried to process everything. The termination wasn't just a blow to my career. It felt like a personal attack, a dismissal of my worth based on something beyond my professional capabilities. It was discrimination, plain and simple. But amidst the hurt, a thought began to solidify. The Aura skincare presentation was on Monday. Ethan had taken over my pitch, a pitch he barely understood, built on months of my team's hard work. I knew, with absolute certainty, that he was going to fail spectacularly. My mind, usually focused on creative solutions, now shifted to strategy. How could I ensure that his failure wasn't just a personal embarrassment for him, but a public exposure of his incompetence and, by extension, his discriminatory actions? I needed a plan, and I needed it fast. I remember the meticulous backups I had made of the original Aura skincare presentation, every slide, every data point, every creative asset. It was a habit born of caution, but now it felt like a premonition. This information was my leverage. My first call was to Sarah, my most trusted team member and a brilliant strategist. She answered immediately, her voice filled with concern. "Maya, I can't believe what he did. We're all furious." Her unwavering support was exactly what I needed. I explained my idea. Ethan would inevitably stumble during the presentation, especially when faced with the client's questions about the campaign's deeper nuances. He hadn't done the research, he hadn't built the relationships, and he certainly hadn't understood the vision. When he fails, I told Sarah, the client will see through him. And that's when we make sure they know what they're missing. We discussed how my original, comprehensive presentation could be subtly introduced, perhaps through a technical glitch or a backup file. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, pointed out the risks. "It's risky, Maya. If it backfires, it could damage your reputation even further." But her tone indicated she was already on board, ready to do whatever it took to see justice served. "My reputation is already on the line," I replied. "This isn't just about me getting my job back. It's about showing that talent and hard work matter more than privilege and prejudice. It's about protecting the integrity of our creative process." We brainstormed how to get the original presentation into the client's hands, or at least ensure they saw enough of it to understand the stark difference in quality. It had to be subtle, deniable, yet undeniably effective. The goal was exposure, not revenge. I also reached out to a few key contacts in the industry, people who knew my work and respected my reputation. I didn't reveal the full plan, but I hinted at an upcoming situation at Vanguard that might shed light on certain leadership issues. Building a network of allies was crucial. The hours flew by as we refined the strategy, anticipating every possible scenario. The anger that had initially consumed me began to transform into a focused energy, a calm determination. This wasn't just about proving Ethan wrong, it was about reclaiming my narrative. I knew the stakes were incredibly high. My career, my professional standing, and my sense of self-worth were all on the line. But I also knew that standing up for myself, for the principles I believed in, was far more important than succumbing to fear. By the end of the day, a clear, albeit audacious, plan had taken shape. Monday's presentation wouldn't just be about Aura skincare, it would be about truth, competence, and the undeniable power of genuine talent. Ethan Thorne was about to learn that privilege couldn't buy real skill. Monday morning arrived, crisp and bright, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside Vanguard Creative. I wasn't there, of course, but Sarah kept me updated via discreet texts. The Aura skincare presentation was about to begin, and the tension in the client conference room was palpable. Ethan Thorne, resplendent in a tailored suit, began his presentation with an air of supreme confidence. He started with generic industry statistics, regurgitating information that was easily accessible and lacked any real insight. The client, a sophisticated team from Aura, listened politely but with growing skepticism. As he moved into the creative concepts, his lack of understanding became glaringly obvious. He mispronounced brand names, stumbled over key demographic data, and frequently contradicted himself. He presented visuals that were disjointed and failed to capture the essence of the Aura brand. He tried to pivot to his strategic vision, but it was clear he was simply reciting buzzwords without any foundational knowledge. The client's questions became increasingly pointed, probing deeper into the campaign's target audience and its emotional appeal, areas where Ethan had no real grasp. Mr. Thorne, the lead client, Miss Chun, interjected, her voice polite but firm. "Your presentation seems to lack the depth of understanding we've come to expect from Vanguard. We were particularly impressed by the initial concepts presented by Maya earlier this year." Ethan visibly flinched. He stammered, attempting to deflect the question, claiming that new leadership always brings a fresh perspective. He tried to dismiss my previous work as preliminary and not fully developed, a blatant lie that only highlighted his insecurity. At that precise moment, as if on cue, a technical glitch occurred. The screen flickered, and then, miraculously, a different presentation began to load. My original, meticulously crafted aura skincare pitch. Sarah, with a perfectly feigned look of panic, apologized for the system error. As the first slides of my presentation appeared, showcasing the depth of our research, the innovative creative concepts, and the compelling narrative, the atmosphere in the room completely shifted. The client's eyes lit up, a clear recognition of the quality and insight they were seeing. Ethan's face drained of color. He frantically tried to regain control, shouting at Sarah to fix the damn screen. But it was too late. The contrast between his superficial presentation and my comprehensive, insightful one was stark and undeniable. Miss Chen leaned forward, captivated by the visuals and the clear, concise messaging. "This," she said, pointing to a slide detailing our consumer insights, "this is what we were hoping to see. This truly understands our brand." Her words were a direct indictment of Ethan's failure. Ethan, now visibly flustered, tried to claim the work as his own, mumbling something about collaborative efforts. But his earlier dismissal of my contributions made his words ring hollow, exposing his deceit and incompetence to everyone in the room. The glitch continued just long enough for the client to absorb the core of my vision, the passion and strategic thinking that had gone into every detail. They saw the difference between a privileged, unprepared director and a genuinely talented, dedicated creative. The presentation ended abruptly, with Ms. Chun thanking Ethan politely but coolly, stating they would reevaluate their options. Sarah quickly shut down the projector, avoiding eye contact with Ethan, who was now red-faced and seething with humiliated rage. My plan had worked. Ethan Thorne had been publicly exposed, not just for his lack of talent, but for his arrogant dismissal of the very work that could have secured the client. The silence that followed his disastrous presentation was deafening, a testament to his utter failure. I knew that the fallout from this would be immense. The Aura skincare account was too important for Vanguard to lose. And now, the true reason for my termination, and the real value of my contributions, would be undeniable. His privilege had blinded him, and now it had cost him dearly. The aftermath of the Aura skincare presentation was immediate and chaotic. Sarah called me moments after the client left, her voice a mix of exhilaration and disbelief. "Maya, it was a disaster for him." Miss Chin practically walked out. "She kept asking about your original concepts." Word spread like wildfire through Vanguard Creative. The whispers turned into open discussions about Ethan's incompetence and the stark contrast with my known capabilities. My team, emboldened by his public failure, began openly questioning his leadership and his decision to fire me. Mr. Harrison, the CEO, was reportedly furious. Losing the Aura skincare account, a major potential revenue stream, was a blow the agency couldn't afford. He demanded an immediate explanation from Ethan, who, according to Sarah, was sweating bullets and blaming everyone but himself. Within hours, Mr. Harrison's assistant called me, her tone drastically different from previous interactions. "Ms. Hayes, Mr. Harrison urgently requests a meeting with you. He understands there were misunderstandings regarding your recent departure." The shift in demeanor was almost comical. I agreed to the meeting, but not without setting my own terms. I insisted on a neutral location outside the agency and made it clear that my time was valuable. This wasn't about begging for my job back. It was about negotiating from a position of strength. When Mr. Harrison arrived, his usual confident demeanor was replaced by a strained politeness. He immediately launched into an apology, acknowledging the unfortunate circumstances of my termination and admitting that Ethan Thorne had misrepresented my contributions. "Maya," he said, his voice laced with desperation, "we need you back. The Aura skincare client specifically asked for you. They were deeply impressed by your original pitch and expressed their desire to work with you directly." His words were a powerful vindication. He offered to reinstate me, not just as senior creative director, but with a significant promotion to head of creative, giving me full oversight of the department and a substantial raise. He even suggested a formal apology to the entire team, a public acknowledgement of his mistake. I listened calmly, letting him make his case. I knew my value, and I knew the agency was in a bind. This wasn't just about my personal triumph. It was about ensuring that such discriminatory actions would not be tolerated again. Mr. Harrison, I began, my voice firm, my termination was not just unfortunate. It was public, humiliating, and based on a clear disregard for my talent and dedication. It also exposed a deeper issue within the agency regarding how merit is valued. I laid out my conditions, not only the promotion and raise, but also a commitment from the agency to implement clear anti-discrimination policies, a review of hiring practices, and a public statement acknowledging the agency's commitment to diversity and inclusion. He hesitated, clearly weighing the cost, but the threat of losing the Aura skincare account and the potential for a public relations nightmare if my story got out outweighed his reluctance. He agreed to all my terms, albeit with a slightly pained expression. As for Ethan Thorne, Mr. Harrison informed me that he had been immediately placed on administrative leave, pending a full internal investigation. It was clear his privileged ride at Vanguard Creative was over. His public exposure had led to his downfall. Leaving that meeting, I felt a profound sense of relief and quiet triumph. It wasn't just about getting my job back. It was about proving that even in the face of deep-seated prejudice, talent and resilience could prevail. I had been dismissed publicly, and now I was returning publicly on my own terms. The path forward would still be challenging, but I was no longer the same Maya who had walked out of Vanguard Creative just days earlier. I was stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to ensure that my voice, and the voices of others like me, would never be silenced again. My return to Vanguard Creative was met with a wave of relief and celebration from my team. Mr. Harrison personally addressed the entire agency, publicly apologizing for my termination and announcing my promotion to head of creative. He also outlined the new diversity and inclusion initiatives, a testament to our negotiations. Ethan Thorne was gone, his dismissal handled swiftly and quietly. The agency, however, was buzzing with the story of his disastrous presentation and my subsequent, triumphant return. It was a clear message that competence, not privilege, would ultimately define success at Vanguard. My first order of business as head of creative was to re-engage with Aura Skincare. Ms. Chun and her team were delighted, expressing their enthusiasm for working directly with me. We quickly ironed out the details, and the multi-million-dollar account was officially secured, a huge win for the agency. I immediately began implementing changes within the creative department, fostering an even more collaborative and inclusive environment. I championed new talent, ensuring that opportunities were based purely on merit and creative vision, regardless of background or connections. The agency, under my renewed leadership, began to flourish. Our campaigns became even more innovative, resonating deeply with audiences because they were crafted by a diverse team with a wide range of perspectives. We were not just selling products, we were telling authentic stories. I made it a point to mentor junior creatives, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds, sharing my experiences and empowering them to find their own voices. I wanted to ensure that no one else would have to endure the kind of discrimination I had faced. My personal life also began to thrive. The experience of being publicly terminated and then fighting for my professional dignity had forged a new sense of self-worth within me. I no longer sought external validation. My confidence stemmed from within. I started speaking at industry events, sharing my story of overcoming adversity and advocating for greater equity and inclusion in the advertising world. My narrative resonated with many, inspiring others to stand up for themselves and challenge systemic biases. The Aura Skincare campaign, under my direct supervision, launched to critical acclaim and unprecedented success. It not only boosted Aura's sales but also garnered numerous industry awards for Vanguard Creative, solidifying our reputation as a leading agency. Mr. Harrison, initially motivated by damage control, became a genuine advocate for my vision. He saw the tangible benefits of a truly inclusive workplace, both in terms of creative output and financial success. The agency was transforming, becoming a place where talent truly thrived. I often reflected on that day, standing on the street outside Vanguard, feeling the sting of public humiliation. It had felt like an ending, but it was, in fact, the most profound beginning of my professional life. Ethan Thorne's attempt to erase me had only made me stronger. My journey was a powerful testament to resilience, a reminder that even when faced with prejudice and injustice, one's true worth cannot be diminished by others' narrow perceptions. It was about turning a moment of profound betrayal into an opportunity for growth and empowerment. I learned that true power comes not from inherited privilege, but from hard-earned skill, unwavering integrity, and the courage to stand up for what is right. My story became a beacon for others, proving that even the most privileged cannot extinguish genuine talent. Vanguard Creative, once a place where I felt a shadow of discrimination, became a testament to what an agency could be when it truly valued its people. It was a new beginning, not just for me, but for the entire organization, built on the foundation of fairness and respect. My net worth, both professionally and personally, had skyrocketed. But more importantly, my sense of purpose and peace had deepened immeasurably. I was no longer just a creative director. I was a leader, an advocate, and a living example of resilience in the face of adversity.